The environmental movement has been criticized for decades for its whiteness, and rightly so. Green policies and conservation have far too often left out people of color and the communities they live in. Mair says black, white, brown, red, yellow, whatever, none of that should matter.
Because the environment does not care about your politics, your race, your class, or your caste. At the end of the day, we are all disproportionately affected by it.
A conversation with the Adirondack Council's Mair as he moves on to other projects with the same environmental and racial justice focus. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street Plaza, Glens Falls. And the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition, seeking volunteers aged 55 plus to support family caregivers in northern and central New York. Visit nyscrc/AmeriCorps.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Monday, December 9th. First up, a state of emergency has been declared in the village of Whitehall in Washington County over a lack of drinking water. Officials say the system that draws water from Pine Lake is not drawing enough to sustain the village. Michael Patorti operates the Rail Yard Tap Room in Whitehall and says the issue is having a broad impact on the community.
For me, with the restaurant, yes, we're closing the restaurant, and that means people can't come in to eat. But my biggest thing is I have on the average of 10 to 12 employees a day who are not getting paid for 2 days now. And, this time of year, you got heat bills, you got Christmas coming up.
The village has asked county and state agencies for help in determining the cause of the issue. A drinking water distribution site has been set up at the Whitehall Volunteer Fire Department. As of midday Monday, As of midday today, there was no estimated time for when water would be restored to the village. Jefferson Community College recently released the results of its annual community survey. It offers insights into the minds of North Country residents and a snapshot of quality of life issues. Amy Feiereisel has more.
The JCC's annual survey of 3,000 residents in Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence counties asks the same questions each year in order to look at trends over time. In the 2024 survey, there were 4 topics of interest that significantly deviated from their typical long-term averages. According to the survey's press release, availability of housing showed the biggest change. There was a more than 18% decrease in satisfaction among North Country residents on that topic. Residents also reported decreased satisfaction with policing and crime control, availability of childcare, and availability of care for the elderly. North Country residents rated inflation as the biggest issue they're facing in their daily lives. Homelessness was also cited as a major issue, and roughly 60% of those surveyed said they were supportive of homeless shelters. That's something in short supply in the region, with groups working on potential shelters in St. Lawrence and Jefferson counties. A spokesperson for the survey told the Watertown Daily Times that the results of the survey will be used by lawmakers and local organizations and nonprofits to guide decision-making. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
A top environmental activist in the Adirondacks is stepping down at the end of the year. Mair has been a leading voice for environmental justice and conservation for decades. He's a longtime New York State public health official and spent time with the national profile as president of the Sierra Club. But for the past 3 years, Mair has focused his work closer to home, directing the Adirondack Council's Forever Adirondacks campaign. The role has allowed him to pursue one of his lifelong passions, uplifting people of color in the environmental movement. And now, as he prepares to step away, he's reflecting on his legacy and his vision for the Adirondacks' future. David Escobar reports.
Mair says the Adirondacks are at a turning point. More and more visitors every year, coupled with the changing climate, have put a strain on the park's resources. Problems, Mair says, will only get worse over time.
We're beyond recreation now. This is an ecological necessity to protect humanity.
That philosophy has shaped Mair's work at the Adirondack Council, where he's championed clean water and wilderness protections. He says the park's natural resources play a fundamental role in maintaining the state's air quality and water supply, issues that affect everyone. But he says there's a persistent myth that only affluent, educated white people can save the environment.
Environmentalism is not a petty bourgeois white thing. It's in all people, because the environment does not care about your politics, your race, your class, or your caste. At the end of the day, we are all equally and could disproportionately be as affected by it.
That inclusive approach has been at the heart of Mair's work for decades. In the 1980s, he fought to close a waste incinerator polluting predominantly black and brown neighborhoods in Albany. He says that experience revealed the exclusionary attitudes that plague many conservation organizations.
Solid waste and what we were doing with our garbage was a big environmental policy issue, and the Sierra Club was leading on it nationally. But when the black community showed up and asked the Sierra Club for help, we were told, why don't we go to the NAACP? So even within the environmental movement, we were just the wrong complexion for protection.
Mair set out to change that narrative. He eventually became the Sierra Club's first black president and made it his mission to bring people of color into the environmental movement. It's work he's continuing in the Adirondacks.
People of color have always had a particular fingerprint and signature and impact on this park. And it took the Forever Adirondacks campaign to bring that now on the table and bring it into the light of day.
Part of that work has involved highlighting stories like Timbuktu, a 19th century black settlement near Lake Placid. It's a story he's told to members of New York's Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian caucus, a group that Mair invited to visit the park, hoping to engage them with the Adirondacks' history.
When we had the opportunity through the campaign and the coalition to rebuild and reconnect, a sense of hallowed ground was basically kindled in the heart of our legislators.
But Mair says real change isn't just in the hands of policymakers. He's focused on engaging young people, especially people of color, through programs like the Timbuktu Institute. It operates through the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry and brings high schoolers from urban areas into the park to learn about environmental justice and climate science.
It's not about changing the hearts and minds of old policymakers. I need to look at the generations of youth that we're bringing in now through the Timbuktu program that we set up, but create that and expand it for more youth.
Mair says the barrier keeping urban students from experiencing the Adirondacks isn't a lack of interest in science or the outdoors. It's access.
It's just that simple. It's not a hard sell. It's the bridge. It's the pathway. It's the way. How do we get them here?
Even as Mair steps away from his role with the Adirondack Council, his eyes are set on the future. He's already founded a not-for-profit called the Timbuktu Mountain Club, which will connect underserved communities around the state with outdoor recreation in the Adirondacks. He sees it as an untapped opportunity. Reports show people of color often feel excluded from the state's outdoor spaces, and Mair says there's still not enough investment to change that. He wants the Timbuktu Mountain Club to bridge the access gap by providing housing, transportation, and outdoor education opportunities for people of color who want to visit the Adirondacks. He says these efforts will inspire a stronger connection to the park, a bond he hopes will encourage people from across the state to support conservation efforts in the Adirondacks.
We need them because we need to protect nature for nature's sake, because a healthy wilderness ecosystem is what we need, as I say, to reverse the effects of climate change.
As Mair steps into his new chapter, he anticipates conservation challenges, especially from the incoming federal administration. So Mair says he'll keep working to create the next generation of stewards, empowering them to meet the moment. David Escobar, North Country Public Radio.
David Escobar is a Report for America Corps member. He reports on diversity issues in the Adirondacks through a partnership between North Country Public Radio and Adirondack Explorer. Before we finish up today, we have a minute to get back to renaming story of the day. A couple months I told you this. I never liked the name, to be honest. So let's crowdsource something better. Some people made suggestions already. North Star, North Report, Daily Surprises, Awesome Encounters. What do you got? As you know, it's a daily news show that's 10 minutes long, and it's about the North Country. So chew on that and send me your ideas for a new name. Email them to david@ncpr.org. That's david@ncpr.org. Thanks so much for giving it some thought. I'm terrible at naming shows. I love having your help. More news all the time at ncpr.org. Music today by Danny Thomas of Canton and Dan Berggren of Ballston Spa. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.